next guest is the former president of the local 325 Federation of Musicians. She's here to discuss a letter she sent us in regard to the music competition we held last year. Please welcome Andrea Altona and her special guest, Joe McNally, the artistic director of the Hutchins Consort.
Welcome to the show, guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Rebecca, that was a big introduction.
Yeah.
Good job. So you guys are essentially here today defending the musicians of America, we will say.
And the world.
And the world, okay. And we held a contest, so just a little background story on this. We held a contest for a theme song for the show. And we didn't necessarily need a theme song for the show. We kind of already had one. But I thought it would be a good idea to give a musician an opportunity, if they wanted to participate in the contest, potentially win that contest, and then come on the show. Jesus Ortiz actually won the contest. He's an awesome guy, and he'll be on the show very soon. But I received a letter from Andrea, and I'm going to take a second to read you some parts of that letter so you can kind of understand what we're going to discuss today. So the letter addressed to me and Smarter San Diego TV says, "Dear Mr. Evans, it has come to our attention that you are sponsoring a contest for a musician to write and perform a song that will be used as your theme song without any compensation awarded to that musician. While we certainly can't prevent you from doing this, we would ask that you put some more thought into it. You may feel that the exposure the musician is getting will serve as compensation, but I can tell you that it is not. The vast majority of the time, exposure does not lead to anything remotely close to an actual paycheck that musicians can use to pay their bills. Yet more and more managers, club owners, and other people who are in a position of power to hire musicians now instead offer exposure rather than compensation. By the time a musician has reached a level of competency that they could produce a show-quality piece of music, they have spent many, many years learning their craft and have spent tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars on their training and equipment. Yet many people who are in a position to hire them and stand to profit from their talents instead choose to prey on the hopes and dreams that musicians have of being discovered." So this is what we're here to talk about today. We're going to show everyone how to have an adult disagreement without any name calling or tempers getting out of control. So first and foremost, Andrea, you wrote the letter.
I did.
Is there anything that you want to add that wasn't necessarily in the letter, or to help summarize where you're coming from here?
No, I think I pretty much said what I intended to say in the letter. And thank you so much, by the way, for giving us a chance to discuss this.
Sure.
It's an important topic to me, very near and dear to my heart.
Because you're a professional musician.
I am.
Okay. You play the violin.
I'm a violinist.
Okay. And so a lot has changed in the music industry in recent history. There's a lot of stuff out there right now, especially with the streaming music services and things like that. I've seen some things that are pretty interesting in regard to that.
Right.
But this isn't really about that. I think we can all agree that something there has got to give at some point. But the natural market, I think the free market will take care of that issue. I think this is really a question of, so this is something that you see happening a lot, probably not in the fashion that we were doing it, but you see it happening a lot, like you said, by clubs, managers, people like that.
Sure.
Are taking advantage of people. And I can certainly understand that. But how do you get away from the idea that that's just part of the free market? In other words, how do you tell someone that they need to compensate someone for something if someone is willing to do it for free?
Education. You simply have to work to educate. That was my job as president of the union, to try to reach out and educate you a little bit about it. I try to educate musicians as to why they should value themselves more highly, so that they can earn a living doing what they do.
Yeah, okay. Joe?
Yeah, there's a sense of desperation that a lot of particularly young musicians have, and that they feel like if they don't get seen, there's no chance of them moving up. And in fact, what they really need to do is network with their peers and find patrons who are willing to value their contributions and value them appropriately, which of course means financial contributions. Many musicians are asked to do things for free. Sometimes it's for a nonprofit, sometimes it's for a for-profit. And there are situations in which a musician may offer their services for free, but on the whole, if a musician constantly gives away the thing that they've spent their entire life for free, they won't get anything in return.
Sure. No, I totally understand that. I mean, just from a one-off perspective, because that's mostly what this is, right? It's a one-off perspective. If some, first of all, do you think that there is no value in getting the additional exposure?
I think there's very little value in it. And the reason why is because Andrea and I were discussing this earlier, that when we were young, we both did concerto competitions and things like that. And those led to scholarships, which helped us further our education.
Sure.
But when you're working in a professional medium, then there's an automatic business relationship, much as if you were, say, to go buy a coffee, right?
Yeah.
If you go buy a coffee, you can't say, I'm going to try this coffee on Spec. And this is essentially what we're talking about, is doing things on Spec.
Mm-hmm.
And in the creative fields, not just music, but in the other visual, creative arts in your profession, people are asked to do things on Spec all the time.
Sure.
And this is a poor model for us as creative people. It leads down to the bottom, with a very, very small percentage of people actually breaking through and being able to make any kind of compensation for all the years of sweat and toil and their talent.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I've never received so much kickback about something before. Clearly, people are upset about this situation. Honestly, I was just trying to do a favor to somebody. I mean, we didn't need a theme song, frankly, and if we'd wanted to get one, we could have got one very quickly and easily. There's tons of free stuff you can download, royalty-free online, which is probably part of the problem that you're talking about.
It is part of the problem.
But there are, we could say it's part of the problem. We could say it's also part of the solution, because there's an evolution that's taking place, and there's a music evolution that's taking place. And I'm worried for you guys with your message that it's just old, that your message is outdated, and that people need to evolve with what's going on. So I'll give you an example. Kevin MacLeod is probably the most well-known royalty-free guy out there. He literally sits there all day and he makes all these different musical pieces, and you can download them 100% free from his website. And he monetizes the traffic through the website. He makes a great living doing that. So that's what I mean. The old idea that, if I'm going to give this, I should get compensated in this way, may be going away. So do you think that you're maybe just kind of holding on to something that is changing right before your eyes?
No, I don't think compensation will ever be out of style. I think we need to pay our bills, and by the same token, I could give you examples like Taylor Swift and Adele, who are standing up to the music industry and not allowing them to use their music in that way where they're just exploited and they're not making the appropriate compensation. And I think they've both been extremely successful in spite of choosing to go their own route.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree with you in that regard. I think there's no question. If the musicians stand up against the Pandoras and the streaming services and stuff like that, they can change that whole game. But the idea, one of the things that you realize, because I know a lot of musicians actually, and I didn't tell you guys that, but I know a lot of musicians, and the one thing that I can tell you is that there are a lot of really good musicians out there. A lot more than there were in, let's say, the 1600s or 1700s, where if you had someone who could crush a violin, the king would just, say, I want that guy, in my palace at all times playing the violin. Now there's a lot of really good musicians. It's easier to find teachers. It's easier to get lessons. They've come up with financing for instruments, so anyone can get one pretty much. So there's a lot more musicians. And as a result of that, there are a lot less musicians who will be able to make a living doing it. That's what I'm seeing happening from a macro perspective. So what I didn't understand about this contest, and I wish we had more time to continue to talk about this, but what I didn't understand from this contest was how many people wanted to reach out in anger about the fact that we were trying to give someone exposure. That I didn't understand. Because if you don't like it, don't participate, But why try to get in the way of someone else who wants to? Jesus, who, by the way, is the coolest cat on the world. He still hasn't come on the show. We invited him immediately after he won, but he said, no, I have a probation period at work and I need to stay. I can't come on a Tuesday until after this date. So
exactly.
He
has to have another job because he can't work. He's not making enough money as a musician.
Though. He's trying.
And that's what we want. We want musicians to be able to make a full-time living so they can devote their full-time pursuits to their craft.
I agree with you. And that would be great. But how are they going to get there? That's the question. Are they going to get there by turning down free opportunities for exposure?
Yes.
That's how they're going to get there.
Neither of us play for free. We never have. And we make our full-time living as musicians.
Okay, that's fantastic. So you would consider that to be a success, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you chose a certain path to get there. Is that the only path?
No, and in fact, as an artist, I know many artists who actually hold day jobs so that they can keep their art the way they want to, because in that way they don't have to commercialize their art or water it down in any way.
Sure.
So I consider those people to be valid successes too. I know a composer who lives in the south of France. He spent a lot of his youth dumpster diving, working on oil rigs, just to be able to fund his composition habit. Now he's essentially retired, lives in the south of France, composes what he wants, when he wants. But he has a completely different set of criteria. And he knew going into it that that was what the life was going to entail, that getting those commissions was going to be very difficult.
Yeah, and it is.
Yeah. I was going to say, I feel like I can empathize with you guys because a year ago I was unemployed, and I'm nowhere near as talented as either one of you. I don't play music. But trying to get work in the field, people are always asking you to do things for free.
Yes.
So I feel like I can empathize with it, but where do you draw the line between, for someone who's younger, you guys are established, for someone who's younger, where do they draw the line between getting the exposure, doing it for free, and then stepping out and saying, okay, I'm going to give myself a value, I'm not going to accept free work anymore? Like, where does that begin?
I was lucky in that regard because when I was, I want to say about 22 or so, I played in a band that opened for Elton John, and I thought, this is a terrific experience. Okay, I'm not getting really compensated, but I'm going to get amazing exposure. Well, guess what came of that?
Nothing.
Goose egg.
A good story.
Good story.
Did you
came
never
of it.
use that again, though, to say I've opened for Elton John?
Just used it a moment ago.
Yeah, right. On TV, right? So you get something from. I think the key is you have to be able to evaluate the value that you're receiving, and whether or not that is actual, promotion of your name, or if you're just getting used by
Taken
someone
advantage of.
who says, "Oh, there's going to be all these people who see you," but in reality, no one's in their seats until Elton John actually, comes on stage, right? Everyone else is just kind of waiting for Elton John if anyone's in their seats yet. Right. So being able to evaluate whether or not the value is there for your time. In other words, what would you get paid to compose this song? Probably a few $100s. If you remember, Jesus kept sending them over. He would compose one and send it over, and then compose another one and send it over, and he kept sending them. And we were like, dude, we love all these. You don't have to make any more. They were all awesome. But to understand, like, how much would you get paid for that? Okay, a few $100s or something. Well, how much is the TV exposure going to be worth? A few thousand. Deal, Make that determination. That's how you can figure it out, guys. We're out of time. I really appreciate you coming today, though. Thank you so much for making us aware of this, that it is a big issue. A lot of people, I can attest to the fact that a lot of people are on your side with this thing. I think the industry's changing, and I think people need to evolve with it, but we can agree to disagree, and we still appreciate your time. Stick around for more Smarter San Diego TV, where we guarantee to make you smarter than everyone else, commercial free.